Hello friends, and welcome back to another Invisible Man reading. Today we're reading Chapter 19, Certain First Principles. "What's the matter?" asked Kemp when the Invisible Man admitted him. "Nothing," was the answer, "but confound it, the smash. Fit your temper," said the Invisible Man. "Forget this arm, it's sore. You're rather liable to that sort of thing." "I am." Kemp walked across the room and picked up the fragments of broken glass. "All the facts are about you," said Kemp, standing up with the glasses in his hand. All that happened in Imping and down the hill, and the world has become aware of its invisible citizen, but no one knows who you are." The Invisible Man swore. "The secret's out. I gather it was a secret. I don't know what your plans are, but of course I'm anxious to help you." The Invisible Man sat down on the bed. "There's breakfast upstairs," said Kemp, speaking as eagerly as possible, and he was delighted to find his strange guest rose willingly. Kemp led the way up to the narrow staircase to the belvedere. "Before we can do anything else," said Kemp, "I must understand a little more about this invisibility of yours." He had sat down after one nervous glance out the window, with the air of a man who was talking to do, with doubts of the sanity of the entire business flashed and vanished again, as he looked across to where Griffin sat at the breakfast table, a headless, handless dressing gown, wiping unseen lips on a miraculous held cigarette. "It's simple enough and incredible enough," said Griffin, putting the severity aside and leaning into the invisible head on the invisible hand. "No doubt to you, but," Kemp laughed. "Well, yes, to me it seems wonderful at first, no doubt, but now, great God, but we will do great things yet. I came on the stuff first at Chesilstowe." "Chesilstowe?" "I went there after I left London. You know I dropped medicine and took up physics, no? Well, I did. Light fascinated me. Ah, optical destiny. The whole subject is a network of riddles, a network with solutions glimmering elusively through, and being but a 2 and 20, and full of enthusiasm. I said I will devote my life to this, and this is worthwhile. You know what fools we are at 2 and 20. Fools then and fools now," said Kemp, as though knowing could be any satisfaction to a man. "But I went to work, and I had hardly worked and thought about the matter 6 months before light came through one of the meshes, suddenly blinding. I found a general principle of pigments and refractions, a formula, a geometrical expression involving 4 dimensions. Fools, common men, even common mathematicians, I do not know anything of what some general expressions may mean to the students of modular physics in the books that Tramp has hidden. There are marvels, miracles, but this was not a method. It was an idea that might lead to a method by which it would be possible, without changing any other properties of matter, except in some instances, colors, to lower the refractive index of a substance, liquid or solid, to that of air, so far as still practical purpose or concealed." "Phew," said Kemp, "that's odd, but still I can't understand that thereby you could spoil a valuable stone, and personally invisibility is a far cry." "Precisely," said Griffin, "but consider, visibility depends on the action of the visible bodies on light. Either a body absorbs light, or reflects it, or refracts it, or does all these things. If it neither reflects nor refracts nor absorbs light, it cannot of itself be visible. You see an upquit red box, for instance. Because the color absorbs some of the light and reflects the rest, all the red parts of the light, to, to you, if did not absorb any particular part of the light, but reflected all, then it would be a shining white box. Silver, a diamond box, would neither absorb much of the light nor reflect much of the general surface, but just here and there where the surfaces were favorable, the light would be reflected and refracted so that you would get a brilliant appearance of flashing reflections and translucencies. A sort of skeleton of light, a glass box would not be so brilliant, not so clearly visible as a diamond box, because there would be less refraction and reflection. See that from certain points of view you would see quite clearly through it. Some kinds of glass would be more visible than others. A box of flint glass would be brighter than a box of ordinary window glass. A box of very thin common glass would be hard to see in a bad light because it would absorb hardly any light and reflect and reflect very little. If if you put a sheet of common white glass in water, still more if you put it in some denser liquid than water, it would vanish almost altogether. Because light passing from water to glass is only slightly refracted or reflected, or indeed affected any way, it is almost as invisible as a jet of coal, gas, or hydrogen in its air. And for precisely the same reason. Yes, said Kemp, that's a pretty plain sailing. And here's another fact you will know to be true. If a sheet of glass is smashed, Kemp, and beaten into a powder, it becomes much more visible while it is in the air. It becomes at last an upque white powder. This is because the powdering multiples the surfaces of the glass at which refraction and reflection occurs. In the sheet of glass, there are only two surfaces. In the powder, the light it reflects or refracts by each grain it passes through, and very little gets right through the powder. If the white powder glass is put into water, it forthwith vanishes. The powder glass and water have much the same index refraction index. That is, the light undergoes very little refractions or reflections in passing from one to the other. You make the glass invisible by putting it into a liquid or nearly the same refractive index. A transparent thing becomes invisible if it is put in a medium of almost the same refraction index. And if you will consider only a second, you will see also that the powder of glass might be made to vanish in air if its refractive index could be made the same as that of air. For then there would be no refraction or reflection as the light passes from the glass to air. Yes, yes, said Kemp, but a man's not powdered glass. No, said Griffin, he's more transparent. Nonsense. From that from a doctor, how one forgets. Have you already forgotten your physics in 10 years? Just think of all the things that are transparent and seem not to be. So paper, for instance, it's made up of transparent fibers, and it's white and opaque only for the same reason that a powder glass is white and opaque. Oil, white paper, fill up the intersecting between the particles with oil so that there's no longer refraction or reflection except at the surfaces, and it becomes as transparent as glass. And not only paper, but cotton fiber, lined fiber, wool fiber, woody fiber, and bone, Kemp, flesh, hair, nails, and nerves, Kemp, in fact, the whole fabric of a man, except the red of his blood and the black pigment of hair, are all made up of transparent, colorless tissue. So little suffices to make us visible one to the other, for the most part of the fibers of living capture no more opaque than water. Great heavens, cried Kemp. Of course, of course. I was thinking only last night of the sea larva and all the jellyfish. Now you have me. and all that I knew and had in my mind after a year after I left London 16 years ago. But I kept it to myself. I had to do my work under frightful disadvantages. Oliver, my professor, was a scientist, Bonder, a journalist by instinct, a thief of ideas. He was always prying, and the knavish system of the scientific world. I simply would not publish and let him share my credit. I went on working. I got nearer and nearer, making my formula into an experiment. I told no living soul because I meant to flash my work upon the world with crushing effect. It be- it become famous at a blow. I took up the question of pigments to fill up center gaps, and suddenly, not by design but by accident, I made a discovery in physiology. Yes, the red coloring matters of blood. It can be made white, colorless, and remain with all the functions it has now. Kemp gave a cry of incredulous amazement. The Invisible Man rose and began uh, pacing the little study. You may well, you may very well exclaim, I remember that night. It was late at night in the daytime. One the one the bothered one was bothered with the gaping silly students, and I worked then sometimes till dawn. It came suddenly, splendid, complete into my mind. I was alone. The laboratory was still, with the tall lights burning brightly and silently. In all my greatest moments, I have been alone. One could make an animal, a tissue, transparent. One could make it invisible. All except the pigments. I could be invisible. I said suddenly, releasing what it meant to be an albino with such knowledge. It was overwhelming. I left the filtering I was doing and went and stared out the great window at the stairs. I could be invisible, I repeated. To do such a thing would be to transcend magic, and I beheld, unclouded, my doubt a magnificent vision of all the invisibility might mean to a man. The mystery, the power, the freedom, drawbacks I saw none. You have only to think, and I, a shabby, poverty-struck, hemmed demonstrator, teaching fools in a provincial college, might suddenly become this. I ask you, Kemp, if you, anyone, I tell you, would have flung himself upon that research, and I worked 3 years in every mountain of difficulty. I toiled over, showed another form. I toiled over, showed another form its summit, the infinite details and the exasperations. A provincial a provincial professor, always prying. When are you going to publish this work of yours? Was his everlasting question, and the students, the crammed means 3 years ahead of it. And after 3 years of secrecy and uh, exasperation, I found that to complete it was impossible. Impossible. How? Asked Kemp. Money, said the Invisible Man, and went again to stare out the window. He turned around abruptly. I robbed the old woman, robbed my father. The money was not his, and he shot himself. And that's the end of chapter 19. So, friends, tune in tomorrow for chapter 20. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and help us by subscribing to our YouTube. Thank you for watching. Bye.